This tutorial is in the group that was set aside for April 7th in the creative category, but we never got to do it in class. So I'm providing a tutorial video so that you can follow along. It's making tiny planets. So I am going to come and open for you, file open. And I'm going to go back over to the folder for today, and I have a thing called Tiny Planets. And I'm going to show you the final result in the tiny balloon planet, and I'm also going to open the original image for the tiny balloon so you can see the finished and you'll see the one that we're going to work with. So those two get opened. Oh, once again, forgot to note that it should open as a JPEG. So I say open image. And now we have two JPEGs. Let's look at the final image first. In this one, we're going to take that image and we're going to take it from a rectangle into an ellipse by just flipping it. It's like stretching one end until it meets the other. And I've mentioned in the indication several things that are important. I want you to realize that the place where the left side and the right side meet will always have some minor problems with it. But what we can easily do is use a little cloning at the end to smooth that out. So I will just hide that for a minute, instead bring up the image that we start with. On this image, I comment in the handout that in choosing an image to make a tiny planet, it's very important that your horizon be precisely even. If not, what'll happen is that when you put this side together with this other side, what's going to happen is that they aren't going to meet. So you realize you can alter. This picture is going to get altered so much that if you're not right, I would take the straighten tool and I draw a very careful straighten along the horizon and crop it any way you need to. I would look around. Also, I looked at how this end was going to meet with that end. And you can often play around with this ahead of time to make something that will work. I also took this image and saw to it that nothing was split at the edge. In other words, the balloon is totally here. If you have half a balloon or half an image, it's not going to look right. So I want a fairly clean edge here to meet the clean edge over here. So when you play around, you discover some things. The other thing to note is that the bottom of the image is going to end up inside the tiny planet. So give some thought to the fact that what's at the bottom is going to be the inside. So I gave you some directions on that, and you can read them on my handout. So we're going to start this way. We've chosen the image, and we've considered the suggestions, and I did a little fixing to get it as correct as possible. And then we're going to rotate the image 180 degrees to bring the dark base to the top. So by rotating that, we go to Image, Rotate, 180. And now is turned upside down, which will give us the best results. So here are the directions. You bring that to the top. You go to Filter, Distort, Polar Coordinates. So go to the Filter menu, come to Distort, go over and choose Polar Coordinates. And when that opens, I recommend that you go rectangular to polar, because you're starting with a rectangular image and you want to end with that polar image. If you had, I don't know when you would use the other, but rectangular to polar is what we need. Say OK. And we have to do a few things with this. The first thing that I do is I rotate it 180 degrees again to get the merge here at the bottom. I think it's less noticeable at the bottom. So I go back to Image, Rotate, 180. And then I look down and say, I'd like to blend this so it's not so noticeable. So when we use the Clone Stamp tool, we add a new layer on top of the background. we grab the clone tool, and we have to be sure that it says sample all layers because you're not working on the layer with the image. And you can decide whether you want to have a full opacity at 100%. Usually when I'm blending two sides, I bring that down because if I select from the lighter side and I'm going to cover up the merge, I would like to merge with something in between the two sides that differ. So I use somewhere in the 50% mark, and I am going to obviously do several things. I'm going to make it larger. I'm going to work down here. So I'm going to zoom in and come down and just bring it up enough that you can see closely the area that you're working on. Then I take the clone stamp tool and I make the size of it appropriate for what I'm doing. So look down here. If I copy the darker side and I go over the merge at 50%, it will help to blend the left to the right. And I want to be sure that I can control and manage the size of it. I believe in this case, when you use a tool and you might have fooled around with it, there is a way you can set it back to its default to be sure that if you did some crazy things with the brush, it's back to normal. If you're in Elements, in the option bar at the right, there are three icons. If you point to the middle icon, you can see Reset Tool. And if you are in full Photoshop, at the top of the panel here, when you have a tool selected, up to the top you get options that you have to pop open. And if by resetting it, you know it's kind of the way it was intended to be. But then we do have to check and realize the default does not sample all layers. So I'm going to put the sample all layers in. And then I'm going to go and I'm going to make the opacity, again, somewhere in the 50% range. And I want to keep sampling each time I put the new thing down. So I will probably get rid of a line. I would like to be able to use the tool and not worry about what it remembers from before. So I'm going to start up here where the dark and light dark band is, and I'm going to size this down a bit. I'm going to pick up pixels on the dark side. I'm going to move over and put them there. Now, I could continue down, but if I'm not exactly going straight, I might get some of this inner band into the next band, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to re-pick up pixels and maybe just a little bit bigger. I'm going to pick up the pixels here, which is the Alt or Option click. Then I'm going to move it over the bridge between them, and I'm going to come down. If it isn't enough, I have to just lift my mouse and do it again until I think I've done enough. You're never going to totally have it fade out, but it minimizes that area. Down here, what you've got is bands that change and aren't matching perfectly. So I am going to choose from the dark side and go over the band and kind of blur that section. So I'm coming over into the darker side, Alt click, come over the blend. I'm going to go up and down, and I'm going to continue down on this one, simply because I don't have that harsh line like I had in the dark area. And then if I think it's not quite the way I want, I'm going to go and pick up, let's say, I might make this smaller, pick up the lighter blend here, Alt click, and move it over a little and get the section next to it. You see how you can keep, if it's 50% opacity, you could keep working until you think it's not obvious. And then go make it fit the screen, View, Fit on Screen. And it's not heavily noticeable at the bottom. So first of all, the junction should be rotated to be at the bottom, and then you can make it blend in easily as you go. Some images will go better. And one of them has to do with, is the light hitting the subject not different on the left side or the right side of the image? The more they are the same, the better they will blend. It's a rather simple procedure. At this point, I would merge down the corrections I made on a separate layer, I'd go Layer, Merge Down, and then if it were the image that was my own, I would save it. In this case, we're just going to close it and not worry about it as a place to work on. So we'll close it and don't save it. We're going to do one other one. So if you'll close down all that image and say File, Open, and this time grab the original image for the fireworks and also get the completed fireworks planet. So those two, open them up. Here's the completed one, and you can see that this is where it came together, and there wasn't a total merge down there. I left a little space, but at the bottom it looks fine. Okay, let me have this. Here is the image from which it started, so I'm going to bring that image up. Now, in doing this image, I ended up doing some cropping when I was over with, but I made sure that this line across here was very straight. And if it isn't, you take your straighten tool and you draw a line across there and absolutely straighten it. Up here, it doesn't matter. But at this point where you have a horizon, you want to be sure it's straight. Okay? And we're going to do what they suggested. We're going to rotate 180 degrees. So it's Image, Rotate, 180 degrees. That will make that dark area end up in the center. And then we're going to go and follow the directions by Filter, Distort, Polar Coordinates. I want you to notice I elected to leave a black here so that the junction of the image will have a break in it. If you didn't want that, if you wanted it to merge totally, you would crop away this left edge. I thought since they wouldn't match perfectly, you see this side and that, it's better if there was a little black space between them. That's why I left it. So now we go to Filter, Distort, Polar Coordinates, and make sure that it's rectangular to polar. Say OK. And then I do another 180 degrees. So it is Image, Rotate, 180 degrees to bring it down. And then because it's not square, I want to crop it to a square. We've talked about that. You grab the cropping tool and make sure that the width and height are the same dimension. It doesn't matter if it's 1, 2, 3, as long as they're the same. And again, in Elements, if you get this crazy overlay, just go and hit the red mark for deleting it. You still got your crop tool. And so I'm going to start at something I think is approximately right. I'm going to come around here. And then I know it isn't perfect, so I'm going to move it up a little. And then if I want to move a small amount, you've learned today to use arrow keys. I can move it down a little. And if I think it's too close, of course, I can expand this. If I think the edges are too close to the edge of the picture, I can go like this and then move that scroll bar off to the right, little by little, until I think it's even. And if I decide that it's a little too big at the bottom, I can move it up a little till I think I like the way it sits in that square. And then I can go, oh, I should have gotten rid of that, but it's all right. I'll just accept it. And there's my final image. So it gives you some ideas on what you can do. And in choosing this one, you need to think in terms of how it will go. Is the horizon level? And how will the left edge of the image meet the right edge? So sometimes you may want to crop that image before you ever create a tiny planet. So I would just suggest you close these without saving them so that when you have them, you can practice with them again, or they're going to sit there while you choose your own images.